Well, I think it's time for us to have this talk. Season 4 for Deep Rock Galactic has been out for about 4 months now, and it has certainly caused a lot of talk in the community. It's sad to say, but this season has been disappointing. But what exactly is it that is holding this season back compared to other ones? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. What's up guys, Jay here and welcome back to the channel. So a little after Season 4 launched, I made a video talking about if I thought Season 4 was good or not, and if it was on par with previous seasons. My verdict at the time was that this season was mostly good, with some minor problems and issues. While I still stand by this, for the most part, after 4 months of going through this content, I have a much different perspective now that a lot of the under-the-hood problems surrounding this content are starting to show. Now there is still good content and good things that came out of this season, however a lot of them are overshadowed by the features that are more problematic. With that said, we're going to go through the content of Season 4 and find out what went wrong that has made it, unfortunately, the most underwhelming season to date. By the way, if you like this video and want to see more like it, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell. It costs nothing and it really helps me out a lot. So first, before we get upset and talk about all the things that hold Season 4 back, let's first talk about the things that Season 4 did well and succeeded at adding exciting content to the game. First, as always, the performance pass and cosmetic rewards were done very well this season. It's good to know that the devs have a good grasp on creating a solid pass that give us a lot of interesting and cool things to work towards, and a reminder that it is completely free. The rewards are great as always, and the infected weapon frameworks that come from this cosmetic tree are one of the cooler sets that we have had, at least in my opinion. Giving us cool things to work towards is one of the simplest ways to get people to continue playing, and this pass does a good job at achieving that. Another good thing that was added that helps to both shake up gameplay and time in the space rig is the addition of the jet boots and the minigame that accompanies them. Talking about the minigame itself first, while it's not anything insanely game-changing or warping, it is a fun addition that gives us a new casual thing to do in the space rig in between missions. Not only that, but it helps prepare us to unlock the actual jet boot crates that we can find in missions. The jet boots themselves are nice additions to give us mobility and height during the missions that they spawn in. Now in my first video covering Season 4, I mentioned that I thought the spawn rate for them was extremely low, and at least for me, rarely ever happened. However, I'm not sure if the rates were actually changed or if I just got better luck, but they definitely have been showing up a lot more often, which is a good thing. Jet boots offer a nice buff for mobility and help give classes that otherwise don't have many ways to move around a chance to keep up. The insane level of mobility is balanced by the fact that these boots don't appear all the time, and in some cases they may spawn but you just can't find them because they are tucked away in a corner out of the way. After that, we have my personal favorite feature added with Season 4, that being the randomizer beer from the Abyss Bar. This beer randomizes your entire loadout, both mechanically and cosmetically. This adds a good degree of fun to the missions, as you have kind of a challenge needed to adapt your gameplay to whatever loadout the game provides you with, which in a lot of cases, the builds do not work well together. However, sometimes you may find a new build setup that you didn't think to use before, and you find out that it actually works quite well. So it can help you improve your gameplay by both making you better at adapting and helping you find a new build. Next is something that may seem a little odd, but the fact that they added new enemies in the game was a good idea. Now the nature and execution of those enemies is a completely different story, and we'll get to that in a bit. However, the practice of adding new enemies into the game does help to change up combat to a good extent. In terms of all the enemies that were added, both the Septic Spreader and Stingtail are great ideas on paper in terms of adding threats. However, the tuning and balancing of them is something else entirely. The Septic Spreader isn't nearly as problematic as the Stingtail, at least in my experience, and again, compared to what I previously said in my last video, the spawn rates for them are significantly increased, for better or worse. While the nature and execution of these enemies may be irritating, the idea of new enemies itself was a solid choice. After that, we have the several balance changes given to certain overclocks and weapons. There are a lot of changes that happened, and without going through all of them, they changed aspects of the double barrel and snowball overclocks, as well as several other updates to things like rocket barrage and even the driller's Subata pistol, which wasn't super needed, but it's nice that we got it anyway. So now we've reached the more depressing point in the video. While Season 4 did bring us some good things, we have to bring attention to the major issues that have also been brought upon us with this season. Now, I know that everyone has their own feelings about this season, and some people may not feel the same way as me about these particular issues, and that is perfectly fine if you do. I want everyone to enjoy this game as much as possible, and if none of these issues take the fun away from the game for you, then that's great. Even with all of these issues, I still love and enjoy playing this game. But it's important that we voice our views on issues in the game, since Ghost Ship wants to hear our feedback and keep fans interested and engaged. With that said, it's time to talk about the thing that has caused the most headaches this season, with the Corruptor. And honestly, it's sad because the Corruptor is the big main ticket event that is supposed to be the center of the seasonal content, and what players want to do the most. But unfortunately, most players see the Corruptor as more of a chore than an activity. So what exactly is it about the Corruptor that make it so unfun for a lot of players to fight? Well, the first thing that comes to mind for me at least is that this fight just takes forever to complete, and for tedious or unintuitive reasons. First, you have to juggle the cleansing tools, which by itself is a pain since you can't have them and your normal weapons at the same time. If they had some kind of function where you could cycle between them and your normal tools without dropping them, that would be nice and make it much easier to keep up with both cleansing and dealing with other bugs as well. Not only that, but the AI for the Corruptor has it constantly trying to get away from you and make distance, and it has insane speed when it does this. This can make even catching up to it a nightmare, especially if the terrain generation of the cave is not on your side. On top of that, the amount of damage this thing can do to you compared to the damage that it takes to even destroy one piece of its health is very poorly tuned. Even on low hazard levels, this thing can decimate you in a very short time, and even if it doesn't, the amount of rock pox buildup applied to each hit is just going to immobilize you and cause you to get damaged anyway. This makes it almost impossible for solo players to take this thing out, and unless you're the scout or have found some jet boots, you may not even be able to get to it. And all of this is assuming that you can even find the Corruptor because the spawn rate for it is so low that it rarely ever shows up. In the footage that you're seeing in the background, I had such a hard time getting it to spawn. Ultimately, while the Corruptor as a concept for an enemy or an event is a good idea, the amount of hoops you need to jump through and steps you need to take in order to take this thing out causes way too much of a headache for players to dredge through this fight. Which is a shame because, as I said, this is the centerpiece of the season's content and should be enjoyable for players to go through. You could just skip it because it can't aggro you unless you call in the cleansing tools and use it on it, but then you have to keep dancing around the lithophage trail that it leaves behind, which is way more dangerous than normal lithophage. While a good idea and concept, the Corruptor unfortunately is just not balanced too great and definitely could use some reworking to keep in the game. Aside from the Corruptor boss fight, lithophage in general is becoming more and more of a nuisance to the player base. I think we're all tired at this point of cracking the 700th meteor of the week and cleansing the 1100th lithophage spike of the day. Rockpox and lithophage is, at least in my opinion, a good idea and concept that I want kept in the game, but it needs to be tuned down in order to make it more manageable. When I see a 3-star length and complexity mission with a lithophage outbreak on it, I assume I'm going to be in that mission for at least a half an hour because of all the things I need to do. And you should not feel like your missions are a chore because that takes the enjoyment factor out of it. Even aside from cleansing the spikes themselves, which really isn't too bad, the crazy amount of pressure given by the Rockpox enemies is just too much at times. They are crazy durable since the only way to eliminate them is to hit their weak points, which in some cases can be very difficult to hit. I feel as though they should be able to be damaged normally and the weak points should just expedite the process. Even more, why can't the cleansing tools be used to damage the Rockpox enemies? I mean, the foam is supposed to cover and corrode the lithophage spike so that the vacuum can suck it up, so why can't they have some kind of effect on the bugs? Not to mention the fact that you can't even fight the Rockpox enemies in close proximity, since they all burst into a cloud of infectious dust that fills your meter in less than 2 seconds. And that's not even mentioning how insanely strong the new variants are. The Spitters have pinpoint aim and can cross-map you, while the Exploders will just destroy you with Rockpox buildup. Similar to the Corruptor, I do want Rockpox as a feature to stay in the game, but once this season is over, I hope they relegate it to a more tame scenario. In a video I made recently about things that I want to see added into the game, I mentioned an idea to turn the lithophage outbreak into its own separate mission type in order to limit how much exposure we get to it at a time. I'm not sure if this would be the ultimate solution to the issue, but it would at least contain it so that we know what to expect when getting these missions, and that would be the only thing we would need to accomplish. Finally, shifting away from Rockpox, the last major issue added into Season 4 is Hoxus's resident Mortal Kombat Scorpion main, the Stingtail. The Stingtail is really cool, but really strong, like too strong. The Stingtail is able to turn a bad situation into a dire one in almost an instant. If you're in a bad position, it could just straight up kill you by yanking you off a ledge. The Stingtail doesn't need to be this strong, and there are several ways to fix its oppressive nature. For one, they could simply lower the range that it can grab you from. These things can pull you from literally across an entire room, which seems ridiculous because one can just spawn and then immediately grab you without much warning. Lowering its max grab range would give you a lot more time to be able to know that a Stingtail is around and prepare for its attack. Additionally, they could give us a way to actually interrupt the grab in some way. Once that thing rears up for an attack, there is no stopping it, and you just have to pray that it's not coming at you. If there was a way to interrupt it without needing a specific stun effect, that would help with dealing with its power. or even better, some form of weak point to hit. You need to break its armor before it is in any way susceptible to critical or weak hits, which I suppose is fine, but these things are shockingly tanky for their size. One thing they could do to help is to make the Stingtail work with heightened senses. Maybe it gives you a warning right as it's about to try to snatch you so you can move out of the way. Or even better yet, it just alerts you when one of them spawns so you know to be alert for them. Whatever they do, the Stingtail is extremely oppressive, and tuning would greatly lower stress rates on higher difficulty missions. So now that we have gone through everything, where does Season 4 stand? Well, unfortunately, I think it's fair to say that Season 4 is probably the weakest season we have had so far. However, being the weakest season and still having good things to say about it is still impressive. Even though this season hasn't been all I've wanted it to be, it is still incredibly fun to play as always. I think the biggest thing to take away from this season are the rockpox needs serious adjusting and several enemy and weapon tunings are in order. That being said, the good things added to this season help show us that even the weakest season can still be good depending on how you look at it. As I've said several times in this video, the concept of everything has been solid, but the execution is where we have the weakness. I think the best thing for Ghost Ship to do is to pay attention to fan feedback and be open with us about what their plans are, which so far they have had a good track record for. And the best thing for us to do as players and consumers is to keep in mind of what is going on behind the scenes that we don't know about until we are told. Last week, we got a ton of information from Ghost Ship about several projects they are working on, including an entirely new DRG set game called Rogue Core. So it's very clear that they have a lot of things going on that they are working on. Now, whether or not you think it's a good idea is up to you. However, it's important that we think about this from all perspectives as best we can. I've said a lot of things in this video so far about things that could be added in or changed, but I am by no means an expert on game development or updating or anything like that. So for all I know, some of the stuff I mentioned may not even be possible. At the end of the day, DRG is not going anywhere anytime soon. While Season 4 may have been a little bit of a letdown, we are still going to get Seasons 5, 6, 7, and probably much more after that. The best thing to do is to stay optimistic that the game will improve and evolve and communicate with the devs so that they understand where we as players are coming from. Well, that was a lot to get through, and if you made it this far, make sure to hit the subscribe button since you clearly like my content enough to watch all the way to the end. I hope you guys aren't too mad at where I stand with how this season is going, but make no mistake that I have no intentions of ceasing content on this game anytime soon. If you have any thoughts on anything I talked about, let me know down in the comments. Anyway, I hope you guys found this video informative. If you did, please be sure to give it a like as it tells me what types of videos you guys want to see. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.